Welcome to Holistic Health for Happy Kids, the podcast where we dive into the root causes of children's health challenges and explore natural solutions to help little ones thrive. I'm Lisa, a passionate paediatric naturopath and mum of 3, dedicated to empowering parents with practical tips and expert insights to raise healthy, happy kids. Each episode will unpack common childhood health concerns like allergies, eczema, fussy eating, and gut health, and share evidence-based advice to support your child's wellness naturally. Let's create a generation of thriving children, one holistic step at a time. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Hello and welcome to another episode of Holistic Health for Happy Kids. And today we're going to be talking about pyrroles. And we're going to be talking to Amy, who is one of the senior naturopaths here at the Paediatric Naturopath. And we've spoken to Amy before in episode 4 about heavy metals. So at the end of the day, if you like what Amy talks about, you can jump back and listen to that episode. And so, Amy, we've introduced you before, but just give us a rundown again about who you are, what you do, and what your passion is in clinic.
Sure. So I have been a naturopath and nutritionist for around 17 years, and paediatrics is my specialty. I would say that kids' brains are my jam, and I love working with anxious children. I love investigating why. I love addressing underlying causes to behavioural issues, anxiety, mental health. Those are all my jam.
And you deal with the really complex kids, like the kids with quite serious mental health issues, don't you? Yeah. And so today we're going to be talking about pyrrole. So explain to me and explain to everyone listening, what are pyrroles? What does that mean?
Sure. So in basic biochemistry, we all have red blood cells, and red blood cells get broken down to make new red blood cells. And a normal byproduct of that process is actually a pyrrole. Pyrroles have a natural affinity within the body for a class of chemicals called aldehydes, and our richest source of aldehydes within the body are zinc and vitamin B6. So as these pyrroles are being made, the only way that they can leave the body is via some zinc. When zinc's not made available to the body, these pyrroles, they accumulate, they cause a lot of oxidative stress and a lot of oxidative damage. And it's the oxidative stress and damage that is the underlying cause to a lot of behavioural issues, a lot of anxiety. And at the end of the day, it causes signs and symptoms of an absolute zinc deficiency because that zinc's not being made available.
So, that was a beautiful explanation, much better than the explanation I fumble through in clinic. So what would be, a typical child that would come to see you and you think we need to test for pyrroles? Like, how would that child be acting?
Yep. So a lot of kids who I do suspect pyrroles in, they have the extreme mood swings. So quite often parents will say, my child goes from 0 to 100, and there's no known triggers for that behaviour. There are things like memory, so retaining information but then relaying that information. Irritability and anger is probably one of the biggest ones. Sensitivity to light and noise is some more symptoms. These kids tend to be night people, so they will have inability to fall asleep. So they are what I refer to a lot of the time as wired and tired kids. So they're physically tired, they're emotionally tired, but their busy little brains are still running, and therefore they can't fall asleep. And one of the key symptoms is that poor morning appetite or nausea in the morning. So zero hunger in the morning, and then they generally will binge for the rest of the day. Some other symptoms are things like delayed growth and fear, like unexplained fearfulness or frightened of
just random stuff.
Nothing with like a meaning behind it. But yeah.
I'm sure everybody listening is thinking of a child that they know now that ticks all of those boxes, and they're thinking, well, how do we test for this? So what is the test for Pyrroles?
Yep. So it's a simple non-invasive urine test. It needs to be the second morning void. We use a lab that only tests for Pyrroles, so they are very passionate and very specific in the way that they do their testing, and therefore we get really accurate results.
Yeah. And the test has to be done in a collection centre, doesn't it?
Yep. So the owner of the lab has actually travelled out to the collection centres and taught their staff on the correct measures of how to do the test correctly.
Yeah. And Pyrroles is always a little bit controversial, even within naturopathic circles. It's always a bit of a heated debate. Why is it so controversial? Because you've obviously described it so eloquently about what it is. Where does the controversy come in?
So I think it comes down to everyone's individual opinion of Pyrroles. So Pyrroles is not a definitive, but for me and what I do, it's more of the missing piece in the puzzle. So similar to that of iron, for example, I will often see probably 8 out of 10 kids a week who will present with like iron deficiency. So it's been detected in a blood test. They've taken iron for a long period of time and it's never changed their results. And so part of what we do is we investigate, well, why? What's blocking that iron absorption? Similar for that with Pyrroles. So obviously the missing piece in the puzzle is that known zinc deficiency. So we want to know why. So giving someone zinc is not going to just address the Pyrroles, especially if they've got an accumulation of heavy metals, for example, or low in other certain nutrients. So for me, it's not a definitive. It's not like your child has Pyrroles and that's all, that's the total picture. It's more of the missing piece of the puzzle that explains why this individual has an increased requirement for zinc.
Yeah. And do you see Pyrroles in like children with ADHD, children with anxiety, like all of these children? Can they all have Pyrroles as part of the picture?
Yeah. Yeah, even kids without a formal diagnosis. Like I've even had some, I wouldn't say bizarre cases, but bedwetting's one of them, right? So they've been to see lots of different practitioners. There's nothing really going on for this child other than the constant bedwetting, which is obviously after being toilet trained. We've tested for Pyrroles. It's come back very elevated. We've addressed that by dealing with that oxidative stress and damage and also giving the body the zinc that it needs, and the bedwetting stopped.
So that's the connection, is it? Is it the oxidative stress is the connection to bedwetting? So again, maybe just for everybody listening, can you explain what oxidative stress actually means?
Yep. So we've most likely heard of the term antioxidants, and antioxidants are the exact opposite of oxidative stress and damage. So what happens with oxidative stress and damage is that it literally creates damage within all the cells, all the body. And like I said before, that's the build-up of oxidative stress and damage is the underlying cause to, a lot of behavioural issues. Yeah, so it affects us at like a cellular level without getting too biochemical, like ATP and energy production, and that's what it affects. So therefore we see like a ongoing domino effect of multiple symptoms associated with the oxidative stress and damage. So it's almost like I explain to parents a lot, it's like rusting. It's like the cells are rusting. So we flood their little bodies with lots and lots of antioxidants to combat that oxidative load.
Yeah. And so whenever you do get a child comes back with the high pyrroles and you formulate a treatment plan, what sort of changes can people expect to see in their child once they address the pyrroles?
So when oxidative stress and damage is a contributing factor, by giving kids antioxidants, it's like a mum having a coffee. It's it's like everything starts working again. So it's one by one, the symptoms start to disappear. They start sleeping, the anxiety starts to go away, their moods start to stabilize. Yeah, it's like it really is like a domino effect. And especially with the kids who have really elevated levels of pyrroles and they've had, a severe deficiency of zinc for a long period of time, even just giving that zinc to them, it supports things like neurotransmitter production. They get an increase in serotonin and dopamine. The anxiety starts to fall away. Yeah, literally life-changing.
And why would a child have pyrroles? Like, why would this be a problem for them in the first place?
Yeah. So it usually, unfortunately, comes down to preconception, mum's health, dad's health, and whether or not that zinc was ever made available. So what I do say to a lot of parents is try not to, focus on where it came from, but rather we now know what's going on. We have the results and we can get them feeling better. Yeah.
I've done a lot of research into like children with congenital heart disease, and they have higher levels of oxidative stress in general because of everything that they've been through. And they also have very high, children with congenital heart disease will have very high rates of autism, ADHD, anxiety, post-traumatic stress. So would to test to see if oxidative stress is the root of their issues, would you just test for pyrroles? Is that kind of the surrogate marker for oxidative stress in these children?
No.
Well,
Testing
how,
for pyrroles gives you a measurement of the pyrroles that they are eliminating,
yeah,
from their body. There's no real test for oxidative stress.
yeah.
However, we can see that in a hair analysis. Yeah.
Yeah. What would be the marker in a hair analysis that would indicate oxidative stress?
So things like elevated iron.
Yeah.
So iron is really susceptible to oxidative stress and damage. When that's really elevated and we see things like low zinc on a hair analysis and then low antioxidants. So selenium, for example, really low selenium. So that can be quite often a trend that I can see on a hair analysis to indicate that there is levels of oxidative stress and damage going on.
Yeah. And of course, we should be getting all the antioxidants we need from our 5 servings of vegetables, 2 servings of fruits that we get every day. But not a lot of the kids that see us are eating 5 serves of vegetables and 2 servings of fruit every day. So what are your favorite types of like supplemental antioxidants? You mentioned selenium. What other favorites do you have?
So I call them the three musketeers of antioxidant protection in predominantly the brain, but this obviously has a systemic effect. My first one would be glutathione, which I refer to as the first line of defense. Metallothioneine is the second one, which is zinc dependent. So metallothioneine is a really potent antioxidant comprised of many amino acids with zinc molecules. That's how metallothioneine is made. And then selenium would be my third one. So adding in that selenium speeds the process up of balancing out that oxidative stress and damage by up to 50%.
I mean, I see all the compounds that you make for a lot of these children, and they're quite complex, and then they change from prescription to prescription. So I think it's really important for people to realize that if you just sort of reckon that your child has pyrroles and you go out and you buy some selenium glutathione, you're probably not going to get the results that you would get when you work with a practitioner who is expert in these, because you change the prescription each month pretty much for these children, don't you?
Yep. And we really go off their signs and symptoms. And just something to add to that as well, giving things like selenium and zinc without knowing what's going on for that individual, you could be mobilising things like heavy metals.
Yeah.
So it's not really something you mess around with. Yeah.
Yeah. And the great thing is that the hair test and the Pyrroles test, they're both non-invasive. It's a urine sample and a hair test. So even for parents who don't want to do a blood test, we can still gain a lot of information, even though ultimately I personally do like to do a blood test at some point to check for other things that can't be found. So can you give me an example of a child where you've picked up Pyrroles and you've treated them, and what the before and after scenario looked like for that family?
Great question. There's many.
Yeah.
I can probably think of, there's one in particular. So this little boy presented with selective mutism. So when he would go into a very anxious state, would stop talking, shut down, and that was his sort of stress response to certain situations. He had also developed some tics, so both motor and vocal tics. And mum had been to many different practitioners. We did a hair analysis, and I could see that oxidative stress trend that we mentioned earlier. I was then obviously able to see what heavy metals he did have going on at that time. We started him on a protocol, so some compounds, for a month, and then we had his pyrroles tested. And to be honest, his results came back at 289, which in 17 years, that was actually the highest pyrrole result that I had ever seen. So this poor kid had a lot of oxidative stress and damage, which was severely contributing to his presenting signs and symptoms. So we then changed his compound with this new information, and we went hard with all of those antioxidants. Mum was also great because she was doing a lot dietary, so things like beetroot into his, morning smoothie, and we just went for the rainbow. So every meal or snack that he was having was colourful, so all the different colours. And the motor tics and the verbal tics stopped in the after the second month of compound. Another thing to add was having those results, those pyrrole results, and knowing how elevated they were. That's what drastically changed what his body required. So things like fish oil, for example, are actually contraindicated with elevated pyrroles because of that level of oxidative stress and damage. Fish oil, as we know, needs to be kept in the fridge, very susceptible to oxidative stress and damage. So giving kids fish oil when they have elevated pyrroles actually creates more oxidative stress and damage. Similar with iron, creates more oxidative stress and damage. So the motor tic, the verbal tics went away, and the level of his anxiety drastically changed from that second month and has never reverted. Yeah.
I think iron supplementation is a really big issue. And the problem is that you go to the doctor and you ask for blood tests, they'll check iron, but they won't check anything else. So you're kind of working on one little piece of information. And, if you supplement with iron, you can cause oxidative stress, but you can also cause a lot of different gut issues. You can also mask an underlying issue. If a child is celiac, for instance, and you just give an iron supplement without working out why they're iron deficient in the first place. I think iron is it's a bit of sort of a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. It's over prescribed to children, and then they stay on it for years. Like, I was told my child needs iron 2 years ago. They're still taking it. Like, you should be able to take it for 3 months, recheck, and then stop. And then that's the end of it. And don't get me started on iron infusions.
Or the fact that they generally need Movicol when they're given the form of iron, and then they need something else,
Then they need a reflux medication to help also, the little triad. And whenever a child does come to you with Pyrroles and you address it, do they then need to take supplements forever? Or can you grow out of it? Can you improve your gut health? Like, what's the long-term sort of outlook for this?
Yeah, great question, because I get asked this all the time. It basically comes down to, you can definitely manage it with lifestyle choices. So having a diet rich in antioxidants. What I do is I teach parents the signs and symptoms to look out for when their bodies do require more zinc. So things like growth spurts, so growth of anything, they're going to have an increased requirement for zinc. Though coming into those prepubescent years, another extra requirement for zinc. Periods of stress, so NAPLANs just happened. Yeah, looking out for these things. The parents know that they can reach out to me. I can advise them on what they will require short term, but basically it is considered a disorder. So therefore not everyone has it. And it is long term, and getting onto it now while they are children prevents like long-term mood disorders, mental health, psychosis, etc. So if you were to go and Google Pyrroles, for example, the majority of the research that has been done on Pyrroles has been done on schizophrenic males in jail. So yeah, getting on top of it now, knowing the signs and symptoms to look out for, making those lifestyle and dietary changes is what is going to set them up for life.
Yeah. I think it's really helpful for parents to know that a lot of like mental health conditions in children have a physiological basis. So, and if you can identify that and address it, then your child need not have a diagnosis long term. They can just understand that whenever they're stressed, they need to, consult with their naturopath. They need to keep on top of it from a physiological point of view to avoid the long-term issues. So, puberty and that sort of extreme growth spurt where I think girls grow like 12 centimeters in the year before they get their period, that obviously is a huge demand on their zinc. What other physical signs could you see in a child to know that zinc is actually, causing some of their issues or lack of zinc?
Yeah, so a lot of kids I see also have that combination of either a low appetite or fussy eating. And that obviously comes down to zinc as well. So the desire for trying new foods, that also comes down to zinc. Even diversity of food, that also comes down to zinc. So I also see a lot of kids who have just that ongoing recurrent illness. So zinc is obviously then required for, the immune system on top of everything else. A lot of sleep issues, a lot of anxiety, a lot of just mental health, the kids that are constantly seeking out that dopamine, whether they're nail biters, skin pickers, defiance as well. That's another big one. So getting them out of that constant fight or flight mode, which the oxidative stress and damage really drives. And then obviously zinc is required for the majority of our neurotransmitter production, so all our brain hormones. So that's where the mental health component comes into it. But little things like poor wound healing, like I said, periods of growth.
Stretch marks? Would you consider stretch marks?
Yeah.
That's what I always think when somebody says that their teenager has stretch marks, it's immediately what I think of, because you shouldn't really have stretch marks as a child, no matter how fast you grow. And then acne as well. I guess the kids who have experienced really bad acne at that age can be a sign. And are there, so we've talked about the hair tissue mineral analysis and we've talked about the urine test for Pyrroles. Are there other tests that you also do or would like to do at the same time as those tests?
I would always investigate blood work if things weren't improving. Yeah. So if the way I manage Pyrroles sort of long term is to, like you said, constantly be having that check-in. So once we get the child to a level where everything's considered normal. So the pyrrole reading is under 10. We've cleared all the heavy metals. They're getting on with life. We would then do like a 6-monthly check-in, especially during those periods of growth. And we'd run like a hair analysis or a Pyrroles test or both, depending on what was going on for that child. But yeah, we can always check plasma zinc as well. So check what's going on with their levels that way. But yeah, like we said earlier, blood tests are not my first and foremost to go to. Yeah. And there's so many other non-invasive ways that we can check.
Yeah. And would you, I know with HTMAs, you like to repeat them. How many months apart would you repeat them?
So every 3 to 4 months.
What about the Pyrroles test? How often do you repeat that?
It really depends on the individual. And I like to go off signs and symptoms. So yeah. And like I said, I can see that pyrrole trend. We can see how the zinc's tracking. Magnesium's another key one that we follow as well on a hair analysis, because it can indicate increased requirements for vitamin B6. Yeah, another really important nutrient.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So do you have any final advice for parents who want to learn more about Pyrroles, or parents whose children are kind of fitting the picture that we just talked about?
Yeah, do not Google. Like I said earlier, there's it really comes down to someone's individual opinion on Pyrroles. And like I said, it's the missing piece in the puzzle. It's never this is what's going on. It's the missing piece in the puzzle. Test, don't guess. It's like we said, it's a simple urine test. I've even had, severe ASD, ADHD kids complete the test, no worries. Like from as young as 2 right up till 16, 17. Like adults can also be tested for this. Yeah.
We don't really deal with adults, but it would be very interesting to do some testing for adults. Well, that's great. So I think there's a lot of people who are listening to this and just running over little mental checklists in their head for their child. But if you would like to make an appointment with Amy to go all through this for your own specific family, just jump on to the website, thepaediatricnaturopath.com.au, and you can find Amy's profile there under practitioners, and you can find the link to book. And yeah, it might seem like a bit of an investment to do this thing, but actually you'll be saving a lot of money on ongoing psychological support when you actually get to the physiological reasons for some of these issues. So thank you very much, Amy. No doubt we'll have you back on for another topic in the near future.
Thank you for having me again.
You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in to Holistic Health for Happy Kids. I hope you found today's episode helpful and inspiring on your journey to raise thriving, healthy little ones. Remember, small, consistent changes can lead to big transformations. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other parents who might benefit. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook at the Paediatric Naturopath for more tips, tools, and inspiration. If you've got a question or a topic you'd love to hear about, please send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and keep supporting your kids in the most natural, nurturing ways possible.